sexual deviancy, infectious viruses, emergency contraception, stem cell research. These are all things we often don't like to talk about. They're taboo, controversial, not always positively looked upon in the public eye. But do we let what makes us uncomfortable stop us? The United States government is responsible for funding 10% of the scientific research conducted in the United States. This research can range from agriculture to biomedical engineering to the space program. And these types of research normally run nice and smooth. But we start to run into an issue when we get to research on those touchy subjects, those controversial sciences, the ones that make people uncomfortable. In 2004, the Food and Drug Administration was tasked with determining the safety of a controversial emergency contraceptive, Plan B. You've heard of it. If you're under 25, chances are you've had some sort of contact with it, either you yourself or someone you know. This controversy on this issue ranges from appropriateness to safety to accessibility. To make a decision about this drug, the FDA decided to form two separate scientific advisory committees. These two independent committees voted 23-4 to recommend that Plan B be sold as an over-the-counter drug. These scientists unanimously decided that it was safe. Along with this decision, the FDA got a stack of reports from different scientific groups agreeing with the committee. However, when it came time for the FDA to approve the drug for over-the-counter sale, they didn't. The government sent this letter saying that they couldn't certify the drug as safe. Looking at their two committees and stacks of reports, and they couldn't certify it. And the medical community got mad, because what they saw firsthand was, as one scientist said, nothing but politics trumping science. In 2003, the National Institute of Health was all set to fund 4 research projects on sexual topics. These included looking into the sexuality of older men, undocumented Asian sex workers, transgender Native Americans, and the relationship between a person's mood and sexual risk-taking. Not exactly run-of-the-mill research proposals. Despite that, these research projects were professional, articulate, and accepted by the scientific community. They were all ready to be funded. But on 2 different occasions, members of the US Congress tried to stop this funding. At one point, a Republican congressman proposed a vote to amend a bill so that these projects wouldn't be funded under that bill. The vote didn't pass. A little bit later on, a committee staffer was responsible for sending 10 grants, including these 4, to the director of the National Health Institute, who was going to talk about these grants at a hearing. Instead of sending the 10 grants, this staffer sent 250 grants as a way to slow down the hearing process. This action was claimed by a conservative Christian lobbying group. In the end, these grants were funded, but in no way due to the lack of effort by politicians who didn't like it. Infectious viruses tend to make people worry. And as we now know, it makes the government worry too. The US had planned to fund research to increase our understanding of how SARS and other dangerous viruses progress, something we'd all appreciate to know about. But scientists plan to do this by progressing the viruses themselves. But after realizing the potential dangers of this research, the government changed their mind. They ended up not only rescinding the funding they had promised, but also banning researching these types of topics. But this ban was so broad that it became a stop work order for any scientists researching infectious viruses. So all research on vaccines stopped. And maybe it makes sense. We just want to understand the risks and benefits of researching these viruses. These viruses that include the seasonal flu, something that infects millions and needs a new vaccine every season. But that was a while ago, right? We're more worried about terrorism and biological attacks. We'd act differently now. But this ban happened last year, 2014. And this ban is still in effect today. A presidential veto is a very important thing. It says a lot about what a president cares about. So after 5 years in office without a single veto, finally using your veto makes a statement. President George W. Bush finally used his first veto in 2006. It was the year of the Devil Wears Prada and the launch of Twitter. It was also right in the swing of the debate on embryonic stem cells. That one veto, followed a year later by a second similar veto, was to stop the government from funding that research. Stem cells had support and opposition from all sides of the political spectrum and became one of the most debated science topics in years. But in this case, scientific progress kept going without the government's help. Millions of dollars were donated by private companies to continue research in response. In this case, maybe not having politics involved was the best thing for these scientists. Because being a scientist is hard enough already. Science has always been hard to do, not just because it's complicated, but because of the business side of it, the money side of it. That's what makes it hard. To get your research funded by the government, you need to write proposals, prove your idea is good enough, and you are good enough. There's hoops to jump through just like any other job. But when your science is deemed controversial, those hoops get a lot harder to jump through. Research is showing that we've reached the point where scientists are starting to censor themselves. They'll leave out controversial words from their research proposals. They'll rephrase their research questions. They'll even sometimes completely change what they want to study. Because if you can't get it funded, you're stuck. We often have this idea in our head that when something is controversial, it's automatically bad. But this isn't always the case. Even in the more recent history of scientific research, there have been controversial research topics that ended up being extremely beneficial for the general public. In vitro fertilization, health problems related to smoking, and CFCs and other environmental toxins were all controversial research ideas at one point. But they got funded, and scientists investigated, and we, the general public, reaped the rewards. Women can now have children that weren't previously able to. We actually understand what smoking does to our bodies. And we've gained so much information on the toxins that we've released into our atmosphere that we've taken legal steps to ban them and start to get our beloved ozone layer back. We owe so much to this once controversial research. It's changed our lives for the better. There will always be controversies in the world. That's something we can't avoid. And we can't just choose to never research them. What if we miss the next cigarette health scare? The next in vitro-like idea? Can we afford to miss out on the next benefit of controversial research? Can we even begin to imagine the controversies that lie in our future? They could be teleportation, or food capsules, or flying cars. We don't exactly know what we'll be trying to research 50 or 100 years from now. But whatever the new controversy is, we need to not let fear hold us back. Because to be skeptical of new research is one thing. We should all be skeptical. But to be scared is another. To let the possibilities of the future hold us back because the past was good enough. That is not skepticism. That is fear. And who wants to spend their life being afraid?